Okay, here we go. Last video lecture of the unit. Video lecture number 4, organic compounds. And the first thing we need to know when we talk about organic compounds are these are compounds that all have carbon in them. And they are all compounds that are necessary for living things to survive. Okay, and there's 4 that we're specifically going to talk about today. The first one is carbohydrates. I'm sure you've heard of them. Okay, their function is that they're their main source of energy. Okay, and it's important to notice or to realize that when we take in that energy, it doesn't stay in that form if we're going to store it, right? We should know that at this point, once we take in the energy, the stored form of that energy will become ATP. Okay, it's going to change it into ATP to be stored. There are a couple different types of carbohydrates. We have simple carbohydrates, which we call monosaccharides. And we have very complex, larger sugars and carbohydrates that we call polysaccharides. Now, a way you can determine which is which, okay, mono means one. So a monosaccharide is a single sugar. This is for like short-term energy. Whereas a polysaccharide is many sugars, and that's going to allow you to have a long-term energy. Okay. They also could give support for some cell walls, like in plants. They also have that function in supporting like cell walls. Support cell walls so they get strong, so they're strong. Oops, cell walls. Okay. Now, we talked about those 5 most common elements. The elements that mostly are in carbohydrates are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen are those common elements that we're going to find in carbohydrates. Okay, some examples that I'm sure you're familiar with: bread, pasta, fruits, candy, all those are examples of carbohydrates. Okay, the second thing, or the second organic compound that's necessary for living things to survive, is something called proteins. And proteins are especially useful in building and repairing bones and muscles. Okay, that is their main job. Okay, they also have the function of like hormones. Okay, they also have they function in hormones and chemical messages being sent through your body. Okay, so right here we're going to put hormones and let's say chemical messages that deals with proteins. Okay, proteins are made, just like up here in carbohydrates, we said they're made of things called monosaccharides and polysaccharides. Proteins are made of something called amino acids. Okay, that's kind of building blocks. What make proteins is something called amino acids. Okay, the main elements that make up proteins, let's put that over here in a box. It is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Okay, those are some of those main things that are found. An enzyme is a really important part of the proteins. That is one of those chemical messages. Okay, an enzyme is essentially a chemical that speeds up a chemical reaction, let's say, in your body. Okay. And it works like a puzzle piece, okay? So there's only certain enzymes that will have an effect on certain parts of your body. And it works just like a puzzle would. You can see over here that there are only certain places that that enzyme can connect to and provide that increased speed for the reaction. So an example of this would be, we all have an enzyme in our saliva. Okay, it's called salivary amylase. And what that enzyme does is it speeds up the reaction of breaking down our food, which means even if you were to not chew anything, let's say you put a piece of bread in your mouth and leave it there for a couple hours. After 2 hours, even after 10 minutes, that bread's going to be broken down and gone, probably. You didn't chew it, nothing happened to it, but you have a chemical, an enzyme, that will start to break that down even without mechanically chewing it, okay? So that's an example of speeding up that process. Okay, so that is proteins. Some examples of proteins. Okay, and I forgot to put this on here. I'm so sorry. Example, let's put this over here. Examples would be meats that you eat. Okay, are proteins. Fish, beans, eggs. Okay, those are things that are going to help build and repair bones and allow you to send those chemical messages. Okay, the third one we're going to talk about is something called lipids. And lipids have lots of different functions. So you see we have 5 things there. The first thing we're going to talk about is lipids or fats. Okay, can be used as a second source of energy. Okay, so we said that carbohydrates was our main source of energy. If our body runs out of carbohydrates, then it's going to go to its second source, which is your fats. Okay, and that's why if you've heard of the no-carb diet, okay, if you do not put any carbohydrates into your body, you don't have your number one source of energy. So your body's going to go to your second source and start to break down your fat in order to get energy out of that. Okay, and that's kind of the basis of that no-carb diet. The second function is insulation. Okay, and this is to keep an internal temperature. Okay, and what this means is everybody has a layer of fat underneath their skin. Okay, and the primary reason is that acts as insulation. It keeps the outside environment different from the inside. It protects the inside environment and allows it to stay consistent. Okay, it's just like insulation in your house. The third function is protection. Okay, it protects your internal organs, brain, heart. Okay, all those things need some protection. Part of that is going to be in the layer of fat. And by the way, women or girls generally have more fat. Okay, and the reason for that is because women have the opportunity and the ability to have kids. And that extra fat provides extra protection for that unborn baby when women are pregnant. Okay. Number 4, the fourth function, makes up cell membranes. Makes up cell membranes, and we're going to talk more about that in our next unit. And number 5 is it creates a waterproof covering. Okay, it creates a waterproof covering, and this is essentially with waxes. Okay, lipids are fats, oils, and waxes. If you think about your earwax, that's kind of gross, right? But if you think about your earwax is essentially waterproof. Okay, it doesn't let water through that if you were to try to put water on there. So that's an example of lipids. The main elements that make up lipids, here we go. We have carbon, again, we have hydrogen, and we have oxygen. Those are those main things that make them up. Okay, and I'm sure we know some examples of fats, right? You have, so there's some cheese in, or there's some fat in cheese. There's some fat in oils, olive oil, butter, peanut butter, salad dressings. Okay, those are all great places to look to find examples of a fat. Okay, the very last one we're going to look at today, the fourth organic compound that we need, is something called nucleic acids. Okay, nucleic acids are organic compounds that function in storing, and they transmit genetic information. Okay, DNA, your genes, what you get from your parents. That's what we're talking about with nucleic acids. Okay, passed down. The main elements that are in here: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. So they have all of those common elements in there. They're made up of something called a nucleotide. Okay, that is just like we were talking about. Proteins are made of amino acids, and carbohydrates are made of monosaccharides. Okay, nucleic acids are made of nucleotides. And that is going to be a whole separate unit. We're going to learn what a nucleotide is specifically. Okay. So there's two different types of nucleic acids. We have DNA and we have RNA. And their jobs are a little bit different depending on which one we're talking about. So DNA, its job is to store the genetic information. Okay, and it's stored in the cell nucleus. The job of RNA is to transmit or send send genetic information to other parts of the cell. Okay? If that information needs to get out, DNA cannot leave. So it's RNA's job to send the message to other places in the cell. And in doing this, the other part of that in sending it out is to produce proteins. Okay? And so we're going to call that protein synthesis. Okay? So there you have it, the four basic organic compounds and why we need them. Each one of them has a very specific function, and they each contain some of those 5 most common elements.